Hi, my name's Lindy and welcome to my channel. Wrapped up nice and warm here in the UK this evening as it is snowing outside, so it's quite cold. So this video is a short impromptu one, really brought about by some, let's say, wisdom, thoughts and discussion that have come about over the last few days. So this video really is going to talk about the fact and discuss if it's possible, and I'll give you my instincts on that, my channelings on that if you like. Is it possible that one's soul fractals, so one's soul fractals, or other aspects of one's soul in other dimensions or in other human vehicles, shall we say? For example, is it possible that one can process or has to process on behalf of those others? So, as you know, if you are somebody that has been watching my channel and my sharings, teachings and channelings for several years now, you will know that 99.9% of what I share is experiential, which means I have lived through it, gone through it myself personally, and or experienced it through thousands and thousands of client contact hours with others. So this side of the work to do with, let's say, soul evolution, spiritual evolution, ascension, consciousness, has been my passion and my specialism, I would say, for the last 11 years. But I've actually been working in energy as a hypnotherapist, healer, regressionist, channeler, medium, clairvoyant, psychic, etc. for 22 years. So this side of it, let's say, is something that I have been specializing in over the last 11 years, particularly on the expansion of consciousness through awakening, through spontaneous awakening through connection, through awakening through life events, etc., etc. The expansion of consciousness and the unification of the human. So my perspective on this comes largely experientially, also from that channeling, not just my own higher self, but channeling, and from the thousands of client contact hours. So what I would say is I do feel that if there is a stronger, shall we say, now when I say stronger, I don't mean physically stronger, I mean spiritually stronger, or spiritually more rounded, or spiritually more unified aspect of one's soul, or a more spiritually rounded, a more unified, more conscious aspect of one's fractal, I do feel that that more rounded, more conscious, more spiritually conscious, more spiritually expanded aspect of one's soul or one's fractal is called upon, or perhaps we could say volunteers, although maybe it doesn't always feel like they volunteer, but does process for the whole of the fractals in entirety of their soul, or the whole of their soul aspects. So the stronger, the spiritually stronger one, the more conscious one, seems to be that that is a possibility. And actually, I could even go further than that and say an inevitability that they process overall for the fractals that can't do it or haven't got there or won't get there. Now, when I say that, I want to clarify there is no judgment in that. It's not a race or a competition. But I'm just trying to explain how I feel this is, and again, based experientially through experience. So why this has come quite strongly to me at the moment is I've had this kind of bubbling away in the background for some time, but it's become much more to the forefront of my awareness and consciousness of late. Not just witnessing it in many of the people I work with across the world, but also within myself. And it does seem to be that if you are an aspect of the soul that is more conscious than other of the soul aspects, or one of the more conscious of the soul aspects, I don't feel it has to be that you're the ultimate one that is the more conscious, but one of them. It seems to me that you process some of the blocks, some of the wounding, some of the trauma, some of the shadow for the other fractals or other aspect of the soul connection, or other fractals multiple. Just because you don't know of other fractals of yourself or aren't aware of them, just because you don't know of the other soul aspects of yourself on planet, off planet, in this dimension, not in this dimension, doesn't mean to say you're not processing it. So why this has been something I've had an awareness of for a while, but haven't really articulated it. But why it's come to me strongly at the moment is what I mentioned in the last video, that I had been processing, and I feel like I've gone just about going past that bit of it now, thankfully. But I had been processing physical injuries, not just the emotional injuries, but physical injuries of a soul aspect, a masculine soul aspect of me in the American Civil War. So in that, I was a feminine aspect of me and did receive injuries, but not war injuries. They were emotional and soul wounding injuries, but not physical injuries. And it came to me that I had been processing for the back end of last year, several months really, not so much the emotional and soul aspecting of the feminine wounding, which happened to be me there, because I'd already done that over the last so many years, but of the masculine aspect of me that had received actual injuries and was using a stick to walk around after that, and actually had to couldn't fight in the Civil War any longer because of those injuries. So the reason I have had to be processing them is because I know for a fact that the masculine aspect of me in this timeline has not been able to process them. So you could say to me, doesn't that suck a bit? Is that entirely fair? That when you're processing a load of stuff anyway for you, as the awareness of you, and you're doing it for the collective and acting as a bridge and doing all these things, is it entirely fair that then you would pick up the slack and do the processing for a masculine aspect of you? And this is just one that I know of. This is infinite, because if you are one of the more conscious fractals, or the more awakened fractal, I could say, and the more aware fractal, the more aware soul aspect, you are most likely doing it for all of the fractals, because you're connected and to all of them. You could say, is that entirely fair? Surely not, if they're not doing the work, or able to do the work, or not conscious enough. Now, on one level, I could say, yeah, that sucks a bit. But really, if we go beyond that, we could say, well, as they are connected to you and are aspects of you, then it would be logical that if you are taking the lead there, you would be the main assimilator and integrator if the other fractal or soul aspect can't do it, because it all leads back to one anyway. Excuse me. So it all leads back to one anyway, because you're not in a competition and you're not in a race there. It all tracks back to one. So if you're doing it, you're doing it for you, you're doing it for the whole. Excuse me a moment. I'm just going to grab a mouthful of water there. That's better. So the next thing you would say to me is, okay, so then you're processing that. So how do you decipher? How do you discern? How do you sort out what then is your wounding? What is yours to process, and what is another soul aspect connecting to you, or fractal, and how you work that out? And sometimes you won't realize it for a long time. I mean, I didn't realize it for ages, months. And what I would say is that it all tracks back down to the same thing again. One of the first things to ask when you become aware of it, because at first you're largely unaware of it, is this mine, or is this the collective, or is this, does this that I'm processing actually belong with this body? If you're too ambiguous and you say, does this actually belong with me, there could be an interpretation in your own higher self or consciousness there, because it could say, well, yes, it does, because it is an aspect of you that you're processing for. There is a connection on the higher levels. So the better way to do it in the physical linear body interpretation is to actually say, is this something that belongs with my body, this body? That's a much more direct route to getting there, and then getting that knee-jerk instinctive response of no, and then backtracking it from there, like an equation. Usually I go from the top down, so I bring it down from spirit, or I bring it down from essence, spirit, soul into the human vehicle. This time we do it from the other way up. The first question to ask, if you're noticing you've got all sorts of weird and wonderful things going on, emotionally, mentally, physically, that you don't recognize as yours or where that's coming from, do this literally from the base up. And when you actually realize, because again, it can be notorious to actually be picking up on collective or the people that you live with, or family members, and even those that you don't live with that you're connected to. But the first thing to say is that actually sit down quietly, hand over heart, and just say, does this belong with my body? And that's the most effective, direct way to get there. And you will get an instant knee-jerk reaction to that no, or yes. I mean, sometimes it might be yes, it does. And then you're processing through, okay, why is this coming up now? What's really behind it? What's the emotion behind it? What's keeping it in place? But if your instant knee-jerk reaction is no, it doesn't, then you feel a little deeper into it. Okay, where is that coming from? And you then talk to your body, really encouraging your body to let go of that pattern that it's looped into and taken on. And what can happen, you see, is your body can actually take it on, believing it's belonging to it. The body can be very possessive like that. It grabs it, says, oh, I'll have that. So it's really, really interesting. Like I say, this concept has been swimming around before, but it really came home to me loudly in the last few days as I fully had that recognition of exactly partly of what had been happening. So if you are someone that is noticing something that's out of the usual with the way you're processing emotionally, mentally, or physically, it's worth looking in that area. I mean, obviously, just as a disclaimer here, if you have unusual symptoms of any description and you're worried about them, you go see someone that's medically qualified, of course. But I'm talking on the spiritual and soul perspective here. And it's worth looking in those areas. This is something we see over the years in all different ways. I can give you a simple example in something like timelining, or when somebody is regressed to an alternate reality, or what was called past lives. They can find that at a particular age in that life something happened, and they can correlate it to their current day, present life awareness reality, where the same thing or very nearly happened again, like a repeating theme or a repeating pattern. We call it bleed throughs, where it leaks through. And sometimes it's not a hamster repeating the same thing on a wheel over and over again. It's just that there is confusion in the consciousness because everything is happening in the now at once, and the body feels it gets confused and thinks it's happening again, and takes on the physical characteristics of it happening again, even though the same things haven't happened. So a simple way of explaining what I'm saying: a woman remembers having a car crash at the age of 13 in an alternate reality, and remembers in this life at 13 there not being a car crash, but something it's a similar thing that caused the same kind of injuries that she had in an alternate reality, or no event whatsoever, but her body just instantly becoming sick and replicating injuries that she has not had in this life. So I could talk about it all day. That's my forte, really, if you like, the expansion of consciousness, the soul, the spirit. So it's really, really interesting. So it's something to think about. Rather than getting mad about it and thinking, why do I have to do this? It's the way of looking at it is, if it truly is an aspect of your own soul, because sometimes it's not, if it truly is a fractal of you, then you're processing for the whole flower. So think of you as a fractal, as one petal of the flower. You're processing for the whole flower, the whole sunflower. If it falls on your shoulders, so to speak, that you are the more conscious, the more awake, the more aware. That's just how the cookie crumbles. That's how it rolls. So it's worth looking at And actually, you know you're on the right tracks with that if you feel a sudden shift in your consciousness and a lightness that wasn't there before, and a kind of relief, really, as you have that aha moment of, oh God, I realise where this is coming from now and it's not mine. So it's interesting stuff. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to love you and leave you. This was short but sweet. And look after yourselves wherever you are. Keep on going onward, upward and inward. And I'll be back with you soon. Take care, guys. Bye.